In ancient Egypt, the god whose death and resurrection were annually celebrated with alternate sorrow and joy was Osiris. Osiris, the most popular of all Egyptian deities. And there are good grounds for classing him in one of his aspects with Adonis and Attis as a personification of the great yearly vicissitudes of nature, especially of the corn, corn. But the immense vogue, which he enjoyed for many ages induced his devoted worshippers to heap upon him the attributes and powers of many other gods, so that it is not always easy to strip him, so to say, of his borrowed plumes and to restore them to their proper owners. In the following pages, I do not pretend to enumerate and analyze all the alien all the alien elements which thus gathered round the popular deity. All that I shall attempt to do is to peel off these accretions and to exhibit the god as far as possible in his primitive simplicity. The discoveries of recent years in Egypt enable us to do so with more confidence now than when I first addressed myself to the problem many years ago. The story of Osiris is told in a connected form only by Plutarch, whose narrative has been confirmed and to some extent amplified in modern times by the evidence of the monuments. The myth or legend of Osiris, the oldest, are a long series of hymns, prayers, incantations, and liturgies which have been found engraved in hieroglyphics on the walls, passages, and galleries of 5 pyramids at Saqqara. From the place where they were discovered, these ancient religious records are known as the pyramid texts. They date from the 5th and 6th dynasties, and the period of time during which they were carved on the pyramids is believed to have been roughly 150 years, from about the year 2625 BC onward. But from their contents, it appears that many of these documents were drawn up much earlier, for in some of them there are references to works which have perished, and in others there are political allusions which seem to show that the passages containing them must have been composed at a time when the northern and southern kingdoms were still independent and hostile states and had not yet coalesced into a single realm under the sway of one powerful monarch. As the union of the kingdoms appears to have taken place about 3,400 years before our era, the whole period covered by the composition of the pyramid texts probably did not fall short of 1,000 years. Thus the documents from the oldest body of religious literature surviving to us from the ancient world. Thus the documents form the oldest body of religious literature surviving to us from the ancient world, and occupy a place in the history of Egyptian language and civilization, like that which the Vedic hymns and incantations occupy in the history of Aryan speech and culture. The first series of the text was discovered in 1880 when Mariette's workmen penetrated into the pyramid of King Pepi I. Till then it had been thought by modern scholars that the pyramids were destitute of inscriptions. The first to edit the pyramid text was Sir Gaston Maspero. The special purpose for which these texts were engraved on the pyramids was to ensure the eternal life and felicity of the dead kings who slept beneath these colossal monuments. Hence the dominant note that sounds through them all is an insistent and passionate protest against the reality of death. Insistent and a passionate protest against the reality of death. Indeed, the word death never occurs in the pyramid text except to be scornfully denied or to be applied to an enemy. Again and again, the indomitable assurance is repeated that the dead man did not die, but lives. King Teti has not died the death. He has become a glorious one in the horizon. Ho, King Eunice, thou didst not depart dead. Thou didst depart living, thou hast departed, thou mightest live, thou hast not departed, thou mightest die. Thou hast departed that thou mightest live, thou hast not departed that thou mightest die. Thou diest not. This King Pepi dies not. Have ye said that he would die? He dies not. This King Pepi lives forever. King Pepi lives forever. Live, thou shalt not die. Thou livest, raise thee up. Thou diest not, stand up, raise thee up. O lofty one, among the imperishable stars, thou perishest not eternally. Among the earlier works referred to in the pyramid texts are, quote, the chapter of those who ascend, unquote, and, quote, the chapter of those who raise themselves up, unquote. From their titles, these works would seem to have recorded a belief in the resurrection and ascension of the dead. Thus, for Egyptian kings, death was swallowed up in victory. Thus, for Egyptian kings, death was swallowed up in victory, and through their tears, Egyptian mourners might ask, like Christian mourners, thousands of years afterwards, oh, death, where is thy sting? Oh, death, where is thy sting? Where is thy sting? Oh, grave, where is thy victory? Where is thy victory? Now, it is significant that in these ancient documents, though the myth or legend of Osiris is not set forth at length, it is often alluded to as if it were a matter of common knowledge. Hence, we may legitimately infer the great antiquity of the Osirian tradition in Egypt. Indeed, so numerous are the allusions to it in the pyramid texts that by their help we could reconstruct the story in its main outlines even without the narrative of Plutarch.
Thus, the discovery of these texts has confirmed our belief in the accuracy and fidelity of the Greek writer, and we may accept his account with confidence even when it records incidents or details which have not yet been verified by a comparison with original Egyptian sources.
Original Egyptian sources. The tragic tale runs thus. Osiris was the offspring of an intrigue between the earth god Seb, Keb or Geb as the name is sometimes transliterated, and the sky goddess Nut, and the sky goddess Nut. The Greeks identify his parents with their own deities Kronos and Rhea. When the sun god Ra perceived that his wife Nut had been unfaithful to him, he declared with a curse that she should be delivered of the child in no month and no year. But the goddess had another lover, the god Thoth or Hermes, as the Greeks called him, and he, playing at the draughts with the moon, won her. A 70-second part of every day. And having compounded 5 whole days. Out of these pots, he added them to the Egyptian year of 360 days. This was the mythical origin of the 5 supplementary days which the Egyptians annually inserted at the end of every year in order to establish a harmony between lunar and solar time. On these 5 days, regarded as outside the year of 12 months, the curse of the sun god did not rest, and accordingly Osiris was born on the first of them. At his nativity, a voice rang out proclaiming that the Lord of all had come into the world. Some say that a certain Pamiles heard a voice from the temple at Thebes, bidding him announce with a shout that a great king, the beneficent Osiris, was born. But Osiris was not the only child of his mother. On the second of the supplementary day, she gave birth to the elder Horus. On the third, to the god Set, from the Greeks, whom the Greeks called Typhon. On the fourth, to the goddess Isis, and on the fifth, to the goddess Nephthys. The birth of the 5 deities on the 5 supplementary days is mentioned by Diodorus Siculus. The memory of the 5 supplementary days seems to survive in the modern Coptic calendar of Egypt. The days from the 1st to the 6th of Amshir, February, are called to the days outside the year, and they are deemed unlucky. Any child begotten during these days will infallibly be misshapen or abnormally tall or short. This also applies to animals, so that cattle and mares are not covered during these days. Moreover, some say though, or others deny, that neither sowing nor planting should be undertaken. However, these unlucky days are not the true intercalary days of the Coptic calendar, which occurred in the 2nd week of September at the end of the Coptic year. Afterwards, Set married his sister, Nephthys, and Osiris married his sister, Isis. Afterwards, Set married his sister, Nephthys, and Osiris married his sister, Isis. Oh! Reigning as a king on earth, Osiris reclaimed the Egyptians from savagery. Reigning as a king on earth, Osiris reclaimed the Egyptians from savagery, gave them laws, and taught them to worship the gods. Before his time, the Egyptians had been cannibals. But I see the sister and wife of Osiris discovered wheat and barley growing wild, and Osiris introduced the cultivation of these grains amongst his people, who forthwith abandoned cannibalism and took kindly to a corn diet. Moreover, Osiris is said to have been the first to gather fruit from trees, to train the vine to pulse, and to tread the grapes, eager to communicate these beneficent discoveries to all mankind. Eager! He committed the whole government of Egypt to his wife Isis and traveled over the world, diffusing the blessings of civilization and agriculture wherever he went. In countries where a harsh climate or niggardly soil forbade the cultivation of the vine, he taught the inhabitants to console themselves for the want of wine by brewing beer from barley, loaded with the wealth that had been showered upon him by grateful nations, loaded with the wealth that had been showered upon him by grateful nations. He returned to Egypt, and on account of the benefits he had conferred on mankind, he was unanimously hailed and worshipped as a deity.
But his brother Set, whom the Greeks called Typhon, with 72 others plotted against him. Having taken the measure of his good brother's body by stealth, the bad brother Typhon fashioned and highly decorated a coffer of the same size, and once, when they were all drinking and making merry, he brought in the coffer and jestingly promised to give it to the one whom it should fit exactly. Well, they all tried one after the other, but it fitted none of them. Last of all, Osiris stepped into it and lay down. On that, the conspirators ran and slammed the lid down on him, nailed it fast, soldered it with molten lead, and flung the coffer into the Nile. This happened on the 17th day of the month, Atir, when the sun is in the sign of the Scorpion, and in the 8th and 20th year of the reign or the life of Osiris. When Isis heard of it, she sheared off a lock of her hair, put on mourning attire, and wandered disconsolately up and down seeking the body. By the advice of the god of wisdom, she took refuge in the papyrus swamps of the delta. 7 scorpions accompanied her in her flight. One evening, when she was weary, she came to the house of a woman who, alarmed at the sight of the scorpions, shut the door in her face. Then one of the scorpions crept under the door and stung the child of the woman that he died. But when Isis heard the mother's lamentation, her heart was touched, and she laid her hands on the child and uttered her powerful spells. So the poison was driven out of the child, and he lived. Afterwards, Isis herself gave birth to a son in the swamps. She had conceived him while she fluttered in the form of a hawk over the corpse of her dead husband. The infant was the younger Horus, who in his youth bore the name of Harpocrates. That is the child Horus. Him Buto, the goddess of the north, hid from the wrath of his wicked uncle Set. Yet she could not guard him from all mishap, for one day when Isis came to her little son's hiding place, she found him stretched lifeless and rigid on the ground. A scorpion had stung him. Then Isis prayed to the sun god Ra for help. The god hearkened to her and stayed his bark in the sky, and sent down Thoth to teach her the spell by which she might restore her son to life. She uttered the words of power, and straightway the poison flowed from the body of Horus. Air passed into him, and he lived. Then Thoth ascended up into the sky and took his place once more in the bark of the sun, and the bright pump passed onward jubilant. These incidents of the scorpions are not related by Plutarch, but are known to us from Egyptian sources. The barbarous legend of the begetting of Horus by the dead Osiris is told in unambiguous language in the pyramid texts, and it is illustrated by a monument which represents the 2 sister goddesses hovering in the likenesses of hawks over the god, while Hathor sits at his head, and the frog goddess Heket squats in the form of a huge frog at his feet. Plutarch, who appears to distinguish him from Horus, says that Harpocrates was begotten by the dead Osiris on Isis, and that he was born untimely, and was weak in his lower limbs. Elsewhere he tells us that Harpocrates was born incomplete and youthful about the winter solstice, along with the early flowers and blossoms. Meantime, the coffer containing the body of Osiris had floated down the river and away out to sea, till at last it drifted ashore at Byblus, on the coast of Syria. Here a fine erica tree shot up suddenly and enclosed a chest in its trunk. The king of the country, admiring the growth of the tree, had it cut down and made into a pillar of his house. But he did not know that the coffer with the dead Osiris was in it. Word of this came to Isis, and she journeyed to Byblus and sat down by the well in humble guise, her face wet with tears. To none would she speak till the king's handmaidens came, and And them she greeted kindly, and braided their hair, and breathed on them from her own divine body a wondrous perfume. But when the queen beheld the braids of her handmaiden's hair, and smelt the sweet smell that emanated from them, she sent for the stranger woman, and took her into her house, and made her the nurse of her child. But Isis gave the babe her finger instead of her breast to suck. And that night she began to burn all that was mortal of him away, while she herself in the likeness of a swallow fluttered around the pillar that contained her dead brother, twittering mournfully. But the queen spied what she was doing, and shrieked out when she saw her child in flames, and thereby she hindered him from becoming immortal. Then the goddess revealed herself and begged for the pillar of the roof, and they gave it to her. And she cut the coffer out of it, and fell upon it, and embraced it, and lamented so loud that the younger of the king's children died of fright on the spot. But the trunk of the tree she wrapped in fine linen, and poured ointment on it, and gave it to the king and queen. And the wood stands in the temple of Isis, and is worshipped by the people of Byblos to this day, to this day, to this day, to this day. And Isis put the coffer in a boat, and took the eldest of the king's children with her, and sailed away. As soon as they were alone, she opened the chest, and laying her face on the face of her brother, she kissed him and wept. But the child came behind her softly, and saw what she was about, and she turned and looked at him in anger, and the child could not bear her look, and died. But some say that it was not so, but that he fell into the sea and was drowned. It is he whom the Egyptians sing of at their banquets under the name of Maneros. But Isis put the coffer by, and went to see her son Horus at the city of Buto, and Typhon found the coffer as he was hunting a boar one night by the light of the full moon. And he knew the body, and rent it into 14 pieces, and scattered them abroad. But Isis sailed up and down the marshes in a shallop made of papyrus, looking for the pieces, and that is why, when people sail in shallops made of papyrus, the crocodiles do not hurt them, for they fear or respect the goddess. And that is the reason too why there are many graves of Osiris in Egypt, for she buried each limb as she found it. But others will have it that she buried an image of him in every city, pretending it was his body, in order that Osiris might be worshipped in many places, and that if Typhon searched for the real grave, he might not be able to find it. However, the genital member of Osiris had been eaten by the fishes. So Isis made an image of it instead. And the image is used by the Egyptians at their festivals to this day. And the image of the genital member of Osiris, and the image of the genital is used by the Egyptians at their festivals to this day. Isis, writes the historian Diodorus Siculus, recovered all the parts of the body except the genitals, and because she wished that her husband's grave should be unknown and honored by all who dwell in the land of Egypt, she resorted to the following device. She molded human images out of wax and spices corresponding to the stature of Osiris round each one of the parts of his body. Then she called in the priests according to their families, and took an oath of them all that they would reveal to no man the trust she was about to repose in them. Osiris was nothing to Saint Dennis, of whom no less than 7 heads, all equally genuine, are extant. According to native Egyptian accounts, which supplement that of Plutarch, when when Isis had found the corpse of her husband Osiris, she and her sister Nephthys sat down beside it and uttered a lament, which is in after ages became the type of all Egyptian lamentations for the dead. All Egyptian lamentations for the dead. Come to thy house, they wailed. Come to thy house. Come to thy house, O God. On, come to thy house, thou who hast no foes, O fair youth. Come to thy house, thou, that thou mayest see me, your sister, me, your sister. I am thy sister, whom thou lovest. I am thy sister, whom thou lovest. Thou shalt not part from me, O fair boy. Come to thy house, come. I see thee not yet, doth my heart yearn after thee, and I desire thee. Come to her who loves thee, come, who loves thee, O Nefer, thou blessed one. Come to thy sister, come to thy wife, thou whose heart stands still. Come to thy wife, I am thy sister. By the same mother thou shalt not be far from me. Gods and men have turned their faces towards thee and weep for thee together. I call after thee and weep, so that my cry is heard to heaven. But thou hearest not my voice, yet I am thy sister whom thou didst love on earth. Thou didst love none but me, my brother.
This lament of the fair youth cut off in his prime reminds us of the laments for Adonis. The title of Unefer, or the good being, bestowed on him marks the beneficence which tradition universally ascribed to Osiris. It was at once his commonest title and one of his names as king. The lamentations of the two sad sisters were not in vain. In pity for her sorrow, the sun god sent down from heaven the jackal-headed god Anubis, who, with the aid of Isis and Nephthys of Thoth and Horus, pieced together the broken body of the murdered god, swathed in linen bandages, and observed all the rites which the Egyptians were wont to perform over the bodies of the departed. Then Isis fanned the cold clay with her wings. Osiris revived, and thenceforth reigned as king over the dead in the other world.
There he bore the titles of Lord of the Underworld, Lord of Eternity, Ruler of the Dead.
There too in the great hall of the two truths, assisted by 42 assessors, one from each of the principal districts of Egypt, he presided as judge at the trial of the souls of the departed who made their solemn confession before him, and their hearts having been weighed in the balance of justice, received the reward of virtue in a life eternal, or the appropriate punishment of their sins. The confession, or rather profession, which the Book of the Dead puts in the mouth of the deceased at the judgment bar of Osiris, says the morality of the ancient Egyptians in a very favorable light. In rendering an account of his life, the deceased solemnly protested that he had not oppressed his fellow men, that he had made none to weep, that he had done no murder, neither committed fornication, nor borne false witness, that he had not falsified the balance, that he had not taken the milk from the mouths of babes, that he had given bread to the hungry and water to the thirsty, and had clothed the naked. harmony with these professions are the epitaphs on Egyptian graves, which reveal, if not the moral practice, at least the moral ideals of those who slept beneath them. Thus, for example, a man says in his epitaph, I gave bread to the hungry and clothes to the naked, and ferried across in my own boat him who could not pass the water. I was a father to the orphan, a husband to the widow, a shelter from the wind to them that were cold. I am one that spake good and told good. I earned my substance in righteousness. Those who had done thus in their mortal life and had been acquitted at the great assize were believed to dwell thenceforth at ease, in the land where corn grew higher than on earth, where harvests would never fail, where trees were always green, and wives were forever young, forever young and fair, forever young and fair. We are not clearly informed as to the fate which the Egyptians supposed to befall the wicked after death. In the scenes which represent the Last Judgment, there is seen crouching beside the scales in which the heart of the dead is being weighed, a monstrous animal known as the eater of the dead. It has the head of a crocodile, the trunk of a lion, and the hinder parts of a hippopotamus. Some think that the souls of those whose hearts had been weighed in the balance and found wanting were delivered over to this grim monster to be devoured, but this view appears to be conjectural. Generally, the animal seems to have been placed there simply as guardian of the entrance to the fields of the blessed, the fields of the blessed, the fields of the blessed, blessed. But sometimes it is likened to Set. Elsewhere it is said that the judges of the dead slay the wicked and drink their blood. In brief, here also we have conflicting statements, and can only gather that there seems to have been no general agreement among the dwellers in the valley of the Nile as to the ultimate lot of the wicked. In the resurrection of Osiris, the Egyptians saw the pledge of a life everlasting, for themselves beyond the grave, a life everlasting for themselves beyond the grave, a life everlasting for themselves beyond the grave. They believed that every man would live eternally in the other world, if only his surviving friends did for his body what the gods had done for the body of Osiris. Hence, the ceremonies observed by the Egyptians over the human dead were an exact copy of those which Anubis, Horus, and the rest had performed over the dead god. At every burial there was enacted a representation of the divine mystery, which had been performed over Osiris when his son, his sisters, his friends were gathered round his mangled remains and succeeded by their spells and manipulations in converting his broken body into the first mummy, which they afterwards reanimated and furnished with the means of entering on a new individual life beyond the grave. The mummy of the deceased was Osiris. The professional female mourners were his two sisters, Isis and Nephthys. Anubis, Horus, all the gods of the Osirian legend gathered about the corpse. In this solemn drama of death and resurrection, the principal part was played by the celebrant who represented Horus, the son of the dead, and resuscitated Osiris. He formerly opened the eyes and mouth of the dead man by rubbing or pretending to rub them 4 times with the bleeding heart and thigh of a sacrificed bull. After which a pretense was made of actually opening the mouth of the mummy or of the statue with certain instruments especially reserved for the purpose. Geese and gazelles were also sacrificed by being decapitated. They were supposed to represent the enemies of Osiris, who after the murder of the divine man had sought to evade the righteous punishment of their crime, but had been detected and beheaded. In one of the ceremonies of the opening of the mouth, the deceased was temporarily placed in a bull's skin, which was probably that of one of the bulls which were offered up during the celebration of the service. From this skin the deceased obtained further power, and his emergence from it was the visible symbol of his resurrection and of his entrance into everlasting life with all the strength of Osiris and Horus. Thus every dead Egyptian was identified with Osiris and bore his name. From the middle From the Middle Kingdom onwards, it was the regular practice to address the deceased as Osiris so-and-so, as if he were the god himself, and to add the standing epithet true of speech, because true speech was characteristic of Osiris. True speech was characteristic of Osiris. The thousands of inscribed and pictured tombs that have been opened in the valley of the Nile prove that the mystery and resurrection was performed for the benefit of every dead Egyptian, every dead Egyptian, every dead Egyptian. As Osiris died and rose again from the dead, so all men hope to arise like him from death to life eternal. In an Egyptian text, it is said of the departed that as surely as Osiris lives, so shall he live also. As surely as Osiris did not die, so shall he not die. As surely as Osiris is not annihilated, so shall he too not be annihilated. The dead man, conceived to be lying like Osiris with mangled body, was comforted by being told that the heavenly goddess, not the mother of Osiris, was coming to gather up his poor scattered limbs and mold them with her own hands into a form immortal and divine. She gives thee thy head, she brings thee thy bones, she sets thy limbs together and puts thy heart in thy body. Thus the resurrection of the dead was conceived like that of Osiris, not merely as spiritual, but also as bodily. They possess their heart, they possess their senses, they possess their mouth, they possess their feet, they possess their arms, they possess all their limbs. However, in later times, the body with which the dead came to life was believed to be a spiritual, not a material body. If we may trust If we may trust Egyptian legend, the trials and contests of the royal house did not cease with the restoration of Osiris to life and its elevation to the rank of Persine deity in the world of the dead. When Horus the Younger, the son of Osiris and Isis, was grown to man's estate, the ghost of his royal and murdered father appeared to him and urged him, like another Hamlet, to avenge the foul and natural murder upon his wicked uncle. Thus encouraged, the youth attacked the miscreant. The combat was terrific and lasted many days. Horus lost an eye in the conflict, and Set suffered a still more serious mutilation. At last Thoth parted the combatants and healed their wounds. The eye of Horus he restored by spitting on it. According to one account, the great battle was fought on the 26th day of the month of Thoth. Foiled in open war, the artful uncle now took the law of his virtuous nephew. He brought a suit of bastardy against Horus, hoping thus to rob him of his inheritance and to get possession of it himself. Nay, not content with having murdered his good brother, the unnatural Set carried his rancor even beyond the grave by accusing the dead Osiris of certain high crimes and misdemeanors. The case was tried before the Supreme Court of the Gods in the Great Hall at Heliopolis. Thoth, the god of wisdom, pleaded the cause of Osiris, and the august judges decided that the word of Osiris was true. Moreover, they pronounced Horus to be the true begotten son of his father, so that prince assumed the crown and mounted the throne of the lamented Osiris. However, according to another and perhaps later version of the story, the victory of Horus over his uncle was by no means so decisive, and their struggles ended in a compromise by which Horus reigned over the Delta, while Set became king of the upper valley of the Nile, from near Memphis to the first cataract. But that as it may be, with the accession of Horus began for the Egyptians the modern period of the world. For on his throne all the kings of Egypt sat as his successors. These legends of a contest for the throne of Egypt may perhaps contain a reminiscence of real dynastical struggles, which attempted an attempt to change the right of succession from the female to the male line. For under a rule of female kinship, the heir to the throne is either the late king's brother or the son of the late king's sister, while under a rule of male kinship, the heir to the throne is the late king's son. In the legend of Osiris, the rival heirs are Set and Horus, Set being the late king's brother, and Horus the late king's son, though Horus indeed united both claims to the crown, being the son of the king's sister as well as of the king, the son of the king's sister as well as of the king, the son of the king's sister as well as of the king. In the legend of Osiris, the rival heirs are Set and Horus, Set being the late king's brother and Horus the late king's son. The Horus indeed united both claims to the crown. Both claims, claims to the crown, claims to the crown, being the son of the king's sister as well as of the king. A similar attempt to shift the line of succession seems to have given rise to similar contests at Rome.
Thus, according to what seems to have been the general native tradition, Osiris is a good and beloved king of Egypt, who suffered a violent death but rose from the dead and was henceforth worshipped as a deity. In harmony with this tradition, he was regularly represented by sculptors and painters in human and regal form, as a dead king swathed in the wrappings of a mummy, but wearing on his head a kingly crown, and grasping in one of his hands, which were left free from the bandages, a kingly scepter. 2 cities above all others were associated with his myth or memory. One of them was Busiris in Lower Egypt, which claimed to possess his backbone. The other was Abydos in Upper Egypt, which gloried in the possession of his head. It appears to be now generally held that the original seat of the worship of Osiris was at Busiris, but that Abydos the god found a second that at Abydos the god found a second home, which in time eclipsed the old one in glory, according to professors. Blah blah. The god whom Osiris displaced at Abydos was Anubis. Encircled by the nimbus of the dead, yet living god, Abydos, originally an obscure place, became from the end of the Old Kingdom the holiest spot in Egypt. His tomb there would seem to have been to the Egyptians what the Church of the Holy Sepulchre at Jerusalem is to Christians. It was the wish of every pious man that his dead body should rest in hallowed earth near the grave of the glorified Osiris. Few indeed were rich enough to enjoy this inestimable privilege, for apart from the cost of a tomb in the sacred city, the mere transport of mummies from great distances was both difficult and expensive. Yet so eager were many were many to absorb in death the blessed influence which radiated from the holy sepulchre, that they caused their surviving friends to convey their mortal remains to Abydos, there to tarry for a short time and then to be brought back by river and interred in the tombs which had been made ready for them in their native land. Others had cenotaphs built or memorial tablets erected for themselves near the tomb of their dead, and risen Lord, that they might share with him the bliss of a joyful resurrection. Hence, from the earliest ages of Egyptian history, Abydos would seem to have been a city of the dead rather than of the living. Certainly, there is no evidence that the place was ever of any political importance. No less than 9 of the most ancient kings of Egypt known to us were buried here, for their tombs have been discovered and explored within recent years. The royal necropolis lies on the edge of the desert, about 1.5 miles from the Temple of Osiris. Of the graves, the oldest is that of King Kent, the second or third king of the first dynasty. His reign, which fell somewhere between 3,400 and 3,200 years before our era, seems to have marked an epoch in the history of Egypt, for under him the costume, the figure drawing, and the hieroglyphics all assume the character which they thenceforth preserved to the very end of Egyptian nationality. The king's Horus name has sometimes been read Zer, but according to Professor Meyer and Dr. Budge, the true reading is Kent. The king's personal name was perhaps Ka. Later ages identified him with Osiris in a more intimate sense than that in which the divine title was lavished on every dead king and indeed on every dead man, for his tomb was actually converted into the tomb of Osiris, and as such received in great profusion the offerings of the faithful. Somewhere between the 22nd and the 26th dynasty, a massive bier of great granite was placed in the sepulchral chamber. On it, cut in high relief, reposes a shrouded figure of the dead Osiris. He lies at full length with bare and upturned face. On his head is the white crown of Upper Egypt. In his hands, which issued issue from the shroud. He holds the characteristic emblems of the god, the scepter, and the scourge. At the four corners of the bier are perched four hawks, representing the four children of Horus, each with their father's banner, keeping watch over the dead god as they kept watch over the four quarters of the world. The fifth hawk seems to have been perched on the middle of the body of Osiris, but it had been broken off before the tomb was discovered in recent years, for only the bird's claws remain in position. Finely carved heads of lions, one at each corner of the bier, with the claws to match below, complete the impressive monument. The scene represented is unquestionably the impregnation of Isis in the form of a hawk by the dead Osiris. The Copts who dismantled the shrine appear to have vented their pious rage on the figure of the hawk Isis by carrying it off or smashing it. If any doubt could exist as to the meaning of these sculptured figures, it would be set at rest by the ancient inscriptions attached to them. Over against the right shoulder of the shrouded figure who lies stretched on the bier are carved in hieroglyphics the words, Osiris, the good being, true of speech, and over against the place where the missing hawk perched on the body of the dead god is carved the symbol of Isis. Two relics of the ancient human occupants of the tomb, escaped alike the fury of the fanatics and the avarice of the plunderers who pillaged and destroyed it. One of the relics is a human skull from which the lower jawbone is missing. The other is an arm encircled by gorgeous jeweled bracelets of gold, turquoises, amethysts, and dark purple lapis lazuli. The former may be the head of King Kent himself. The latter is almost certain the arm of his queen. One of the bracelets is composed of alternate plaques of gold and turquoise, each ornamented with the figure of a hawk perched on the top of it. The hawk was a sacred bird or crest of the earliest dynasties of Egyptian kings. The figure of a hawk was borne before the king as a standard on solemn occasions. The oldest capital of the country known to us was called Hawktown. There the kings of the first dynasty built a temple to the hawk. There in modern times has been found a splendid golden head of a hawk dating from the ancient empire, and on the lifelike statue of King Khephren of the third dynasty we see a hawk with outspread wings protecting the back of the monarch's head. From the earliest to the latest times of Egyptian civilization, the hawk was the epithet of the king of Egypt, and of the king alone. It took the first place in the list of his titles. Both these writers regard the hawk as the totem of the royal clan. This view is rejected by Professor Ed Meyer, who, however, holds that Horus, whose emblem was the hawk, was the oldest national god of Egypt. He prefers to suppose that the hawk, or rather the falcon, was the emblem of a god of light because the bird flies high in the sky. According to him, the bird is not the sparrow hawk, but the falcon. A similar view is adopted by Professor A. Wiedemann. The native Egyptian name of Hawktown was Nechen. In Greek it was Hierakonpolis. Hawks were worshipped by the inhabitants. The sanctity of the bird may help us to understand why Isis took the form of a hawk in order to mate with her dead husband and brother. Why the Queen of Egypt wore on her arm a bracelet adorned with golden hawks, and why in the Holy Sepulchre the four sons of Horus were represented in the likeness of hawks keeping watch over the effigy of their divine grandfather. According to the legend, the four sons of Horus were set by Anubis to protect the burial of Osiris. They washed the dead body, they mourned over him, and they opened his cold lips with their fingers, but they disappeared, for Isis had caused them to grow out of a lotus flower in a pool of water. In that position, they are sometimes represented in Egyptian art before the seated effigy of Osiris. The legend recorded by Plutarch, which associated the dead Osiris with Byblos in Phoenicia, is doubtless late and probably untrustworthy. It may have been suggested by the resemblance which the worship of the Egyptian Osiris bore to the worship of the Phoenician Adonis. The worship of the Phoenician Osiris bore the resemblance which the worship of the Egyptian Osiris bore to the worship of the Phoenician Adonis in that city. But it is possible that the story has no deeper foundation than a verbal misunderstanding. It is possible. It is possible. It is possible. For Byblos is not only the name of a city, it is the Greek word for papyrus, and as Isis is said after the death of Osiris to have taken refuge in the papyrus swamps of the Delta, where she gave birth to and reared her son Horus, a Greek writer may perhaps have confused the plant with the city of the same name. However, that may have been the association of Osiris with Adonis at Byblos gave rise to a curious tale. It is said that every year the people beyond the rivers of Ethiopia used to write a letter to the women of Byblos, informing them that the lost and lamented Adonis was found. This letter they enclosed in an earthen pot, which they sealed and sent floating down the river to the sea. The waves carried the pot to Byblos, where every year it arrived at the time when the Syrian women were weeping for their dead lord. When the Syrian women were weeping for their dead lord, the pot was taken up from the water and opened. The letter was read, and the weeping women dried their tears. And the weeping women dried their tears because the lost Adonis was found. Because the lost Adonis was found. A useful clue to the original nature of a god or goddess is often furnished by the season at which his or her festival is celebrated. A useful clue. Thus, if the festival falls at the new or the full moon, there is a certain presumption that the deity thus honored either is the moon or at least has lunar affinities. If the festival is held at the winter or summer solstice, we naturally surmise that the god is the sun, or at all events that he stands in some close relation to that luminary. Again, if the festival coincides with the time of sowing or harvest, we are inclined to infer that the divinity is an embodiment of the earth or of the corn. These presumptions or inferences taken by themselves are by no means conclusive, but if they happen to be confirmed by other indications, the evidence may be regarded as fairly strong. Unfortunately, in dealing with the Egyptian gods, we are in a great measure precluded from making use of this clue. The reason is not that the dates of the festivals are always unknown, but that they shifted from year to year until after a long interval they had revolved through the whole course of the seasons. This gradual revolution of the festal Egyptian cycle resulted from the employment of a calendar year which neither corresponded exactly to the solar year nor was periodically corrected by intercalation. The solar year is equivalent to about 365 and a quarter days, but the ancient Egyptians, ignoring the quarter of a day, reckoned the year at 365 days only. Thus, each of their calendar years was shorter than the true solar year by about a quarter of a day. In 4 years, the deficiency amounted to 1 whole day. In 40 years, it amounted to 10 days. In 400 years, it amounted to 100 days. And so it went on increasing until after a lapse of 4 times 365, or 1,460 solar years, the deficiency amounted to 365 days, or a whole Egyptian year. Hence 1,460 solar years of their equivalent 1,461 Egyptian years formed a period or cycle at the end of which the Egyptian festivals returned to those points of the solar year at which they had been celebrated in the beginning. In the meantime, they had been held successively on every day of the solar year, though always on the same day of the calendar. Thus, the official calendar was completely divorced, except at rare and long intervals, from what may be called the natural calendar of the shepherd, the husbandman, and the sailor. That is, from the course of the seasons in which the times for the various labors of cattle breeding, tillage, and navigation are marked by the position of the sun in the sky, the rising or setting of the stars, the fall of rain, the growth of pasture, the ripening of the corn, the blowing of certain winds, and so forth. Nowhere, perhaps, are the events of this natural calendar better marked or more regular in their recurrence than in Egypt. Nowhere, accordingly, could their divergence from the corresponding dates of the official calendar be more readily observed.